We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Yuruzi and this is part 12 of What If Naruto Sends Himself Back in Time to Fix His Mistakes. Naruto, at 26, has lived through 10 years of war. At the end, with nothing left to call home, he sends himself back to the beginning, to the day of his younger self's graduation, in an attempt to change it all. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Haruki ran. He ran and ran and ran, dashing across rooftops and down alleys. He didn't really know where he was going, he just couldn't stay where he was. The wind howled and the rain obscured his vision. He was soaked to the bone after 5 steps outside, but he didn't care. They were still following him. Those damn voices. The haunting memories, the ones he failed, the promises he broke. Snap out of it. He screamed in his head, that time is gone. It happened, but it's over. That's why I'm here. But can you really stop it? The voice said. That damn voice. It didn't belong to any one person. It was like all of them together and yet like none of them. Open your eyes and look. Can you really save us? You promised last time and look how that turned out. Everywhere the redhead looked it was like his memory overplayed what was second he would see a wet dreary Konoha and the next nothing but ashes dancing in black flames. Stop it. I refuse to believe it. In a burst of speed the redhead launches himself even faster through the storm. Suddenly though he lost his footing. You can't outrun us. We are with you wherever you go. Avenge us, Naruto. Avenge your failure. Kit, Naruto, we rusted you. We believed in you. Kit, why didn't you save me, Naruto? I loved you, Naruto. In an instant the voices were gone. The world was back to normal. Haruki was lying face first on the cobblestone street of an alleyway as the cold rain poured down, panting. What was that? He thought as he felt his hammering heart. Time disassociation, it's a side effect of the paradox. We are very lucky you escaped this time on your own. You'll need to do something about this or the next time you may not be so lucky. What? He replied to the fox, tiredly trying to follow what he was saying. Your trauma is causing a time seal feedback loop. The same thing that causes your body to fail at certain intervals is also affecting your mind. If the balance of yang chakra in the seal fluctuates outside the tolerable limits of the seal matrix, your body will dissociate and exist in both times simultaneous, hence your condition. The more you feed it the worse it gets, and if you get lost in the loop then your mind will break trying to be in 2 times at once. Stress on either chakra type production will cause this, and my chakra can't compensate enough passively. My help would blow our secret out in the open, which we can't afford. And how the hell am I supposed to stop that? He snaps back, exasperated. The same way you always do. By not giving up. Kurama responded evenly, like it was the most obvious answer in the world. Time disassociation happens when you doubt, when want to go back more than you want to go forward. If you don't give up and focus on where you are going, it will prevent you from subconsciously making part of the seal flow backwards, which causes the imbalance that feeds the feedback loop. Your chakra is influenced by who you are and how you think. That's basic chakra theory, numbskull. So, simply just don't give up. You might not be able to stop every instance, but trying won't hurt. Haruki stayed silent for a moment as he processed what Kurama had said. Hey Kurama. You suck when you're right. Love you too, fleshbag. The fox scoffed sarcastically. Haruki made to stand, but as he took a step he began to fall, only to be caught by an umbu with purple hair. You shouldn't train so much. The woman's voice said. Haruki just grunted, far too tired to argue. The stress of breaking out of the time disassociation had drained him. The rain is starting to let up. Let's get you home, senpai. She said and shunshins with him on her back. They arrived at his apartment where he insisted he could stand now. Thank you Anbu-san, but I can make it from here. He said, opening the door while waving over his shoulder. She nodded and disappeared, though he could tell she had only gone to the roof to observe him. At least the storm had passed by now. Haruki absently notes to himself that Kakashi must be at his own place until he walks in and finds a cup of hot chocolate waiting for him on the counter and Kakashi presumably asleep, on the couch. Deciding that he can figure out how the man got in his apartment in the morning and frankly far too tired to care, Haruki walks into his room, throws off his cloths and crashes on his bed where he's asleep in seconds. Beep 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 crunch. Haruki opened his eyes slowly, letting them adjust to the dim light that tried to bend around the blackout curtains that covered his bedroom window. He was laying face down naked in the bed, only part of his left leg covered in his sheets. His right arm was still outstretched, resting on his nightstand with his fist embedded in the remains of his alarm clock. Haruki blinked to himself, examining that thought again. He was woken by his alarm. He hadn't slept late enough to allow his alarm to wake him since he had returned to this time. Taking his arm out the mechanical remains, Haruki pushed himself onto his knees and stretched out, popping several joints across his body as he did so. He hadn't felt this good in a long time. Granted, one healthy night of sleep and a belly full of good food was all it took to repair a good bit of damage when you were a Jinchuriki. With a yawn and one last stretch, Haruki got off his mattress and went to shower. His alarm was set to go off at 7:30, so he had a bit of time before he was expected to report at the academy. Haruki sighed as he quickly washed and then dried off. A lot had happened in the last couple of days, and last night was just the most recent complication. He didn't know how Team 10 was going to react to him after last night's episode or what their parents would do. Shikaku would understand even if he would encourage him to keep better control, but the others didn't know the details. Hell, he had just figured out a major drawback to his time seal and the cost if he slipped up. He would have to think of a way to help mitigate the risks of a relapse just in case. He would also need to tell the old man and Shikaku what was up, though he dreaded to do that. He didn't want them questioning his capabilities. He had had a meltdown of some sort almost every night since the meeting. At least now he knew what a contributing factor was. He had always been an emotional person even when he wasn't supposed to be, and now it was beginning to haunt him. Mind-breaking trauma and its consequences aside, several unexpected events had also happened the last couple days. First there was the twist at the council meeting, then Hayashi's request for help which came way earlier than he expected, then Genma's confrontation which was his own fault for not being careful enough, and then his interaction with Danzo and the elders which still made no sense to him at all. There were too many new variables to consider. Today promised to not be any easier. First, he had to administer the sealing exams, and then he had training with Team 8, and if he was honest, he wasn't quite prepped for that yet after last night. Haruki needed a solid training session to clear his head and prep for his fight with Hiruzen later that week. After getting dressed and cleaning up the broken clock that he just bought, Haruki left his bedroom expecting to find a Kakashi sleeping on his couch. He walked out of his room, absently noting that he hadn't closed his bedroom door last night, and was surprised to find that his couch was empty with the blanket half on the couch and half off, clearly used. On the table in the kitchen was a note that looked scribbled in a hurry. It said, "Called for a mission. You've got the kids today, cancel their training at your own peril. Don't forget to lock your door this time." Haruki rolled his eyes. Well, that wasn't happening. He would send a clone to do individual training with them and then he'd give them the day off or tell them to train together. They wouldn't be getting many of those before too long. At least he knew how the Cyclops got in his apartment in the first place. Deciding that he needed to be in more than one place at a time, Haruki formed a clone to handle this morning's testing. He didn't want to do the orientation lecture anyway, and Shiho could handle the rest. Time to do some training in the old stomping ground. Quickly grabbing a bagel, the redhead exited his apartment and locked it with its security seals before racing off to the Forest of Death. His clone headed to his office as his previous clone there had dispelled about 2 hours ago. The academy was bustling with activity as the introductory lessons and subsequent evaluation of Fuinjutsu were supposed to be administered over the next 3 days. The Chunin staff of the academy had cancelled all class that day and were asked to assist the sealing department in setting up the facilities. This wasn't surprising to them given their role at the institution. What did surprise them was who showed up to spearhead the orchestration when it was time for them to begin making preparations. Apparently, the sealing department consisted of 2 people at the moment. The department head, the mysterious redhead who just appeared out of nowhere and was the talk of the ninja community in Konoha right now, and his new assistant whom had shown up loaded down with files and books and looking extremely flustered. The staff quickly took pity on the poor girl and offered to go and retrieve the rest of the materials from her office. The girl just smirked and said, "That won't be necessary," before opening one of the giant scrolls she brought with her and unfurled it. Channeling chakra into the scroll, She tried hard not to laugh at the expressions of the Chunin staff as courtyard was quickly filled with stacks of paperwork, books and other materials, including stage pieces and a small host of chairs. This ought to last us the testing period and the orientation class. Could you please begin sorting the stacks to the appropriate room? Each should be labeled already. The rest of you please assist me in setting up the stage and presentation table for the director. The dumbfounded Chunin instructors quickly shook themselves of their surprise and began following her specific instructions. Shiho was incredibly pleased with herself and simultaneously incredibly nervous. When Haruki-senpai came to inform her that she had gotten job, she was incredibly surprised. She of course was thrilled at the opportunity and was confident that she could do the job, but surely there had been more qualified people that applied for the position. The man hadn't given her much time to process her success, and he left her a lengthy list of secretarial tasks to accomplish. These ranged from familiarizing herself with her new workspace, the files inside, Fuinjutsu protocol, and the new sealing knowledge that she was supposed to become familiar with. Learning sealing from a seal master was one of the biggest perks of the job, but Haruki-senpai said she had a lot to learn on her own before he could really teach was all a bit overwhelming. It also became readily apparent that Haruki never stopped working and thus had a tendency to forget that other people couldn't make endless copies of themselves to work around the clock. Never one to back down for an academic challenge, though, she pushed forward, and this was the culmination of her work. If she could successfully establish the testing environment, then perhaps she could affirm to herself and her rather mysterious new boss that she was the right person for the position. It was probably silly of her to view it this way, but she couldn't help it. With the amount of help available and a diligent effort, the academy staff under Shiho's direction was able to finalize the preparations in a little over an hour's time. She was just finishing the finishing touches to the presentation table when the first of the test takers started to arrive. For the next 20 minutes a steady stream of ninja arrived for today's presentation and evaluation, ranging in rank from genin to jonin, with some ANBU mixed in, though they were not in uniform, and so the only way to tell was to look at the registration paperwork they filled out after the fact. Everything was going smoothly except for one critical facet. With 10 minutes left until the beginning of the orientation, the presenter had yet to show. As registration was about to close for the day, one final party arrived that raised Shiho's stress levels to new heights. The Hokage and his advisors had come themselves to view today's presentation. Shiho stood off the side of the stage trying to suppress the building panic inside her if her boss didn't show up. Where is he? After all this work, I'm going to have to get up there and try and wing an orientation about things I barely know. I haven't learned enough myself to answer all the possible questions they could ask. What do I do? What do I do? The Hokage greeted and spoke with many ninja as he and his advisors found their seats. The courtyard was almost completely full, at least 500 ninja were present. Most seemed to be Chunin and Jonin, all of which had seniority over her. She stilled herself and took a breath. Calm down. I don't have to pretend to know the answers, I can just skip the introduction to sealing and go straight to examination. Just as she was taking the stage to bluff her way through the opening speech, gaining the attention of the assembly, she saw a familiar stalk of red hair round the corner into the academy courtyard. She made eye contact with the man and he stuttered slightly in his step. Good, Shiho thought, glad he understands the situation. Then again, maybe I shouldn't be trying to intimidate my new boss. Sighing to herself, she addressed the crowd. Thank you all for coming today to the first Fuinjutsu evaluation exam and orientation. My name is Shiho and I am the assistant to Kazuma Haruki, the head of the sealing department and barrier corps. After a brief introduction, you will each be dismissed to a testing room indicated by the color letter and number on the card you received when you registered. Here she held up a sample card that was red with the letter B and the number 48 in black inscribed on it. When you receive your test, please mark the correct color letter and number in the boxes on the top right corner. This will reveal your test. If you do this incorrectly, you could end up taking the incorrect test and your evaluation will not be counted. The various versions of this exam have been formulated based on the level of experience that was indicated in your file or on your application. Each test is customized and thus cheating is not advised, as it is likely not to work and is self-defeating to the purpose of this evaluation. Your scores can be calculated quickly, so you should know your results and the corresponding sealing proficiency assigned to you by the end of today. You have as long as you need to take the test and may take breaks as you desire. However, submissions will not carry over to the next day and all submissions must be turned in by 5 p.m. today to count. If you leave the academy grounds before you have submitted your test, then your test is void and you will need to take it again another time. Food stalls will be set up in the courtyard following the orientation for those who will need a food break. Be advised that these evaluations are meant to push the limits of your understanding. She finished holding up her finger as drawing attention to her reminder. Seeing nods of understanding, Shiho continued, Kazamadano will now lead the orientation into sealing. I wish you all good luck. She finished with a bow. The crowd looked to the side of the stage as she exited to see the mysterious Jonin take her place. If he was perturbed by the honorific, he didn't show it. He was relaxed as he approached the table set up for him. Looking out into the audience, Haruki saw several key figures. Hayashi and his brother were both present with several members of their clan including Niji. Haruki could also see Choza and Shikaku along with the Hokage and his advisors. Danzo was in the back, stoic as ever. He saw Genma, Rado, Yugao and Hayata sitting together off to the left of the stage. Sighing internally, boss's orders suck. I'll just have Shiho do the rest of these. Keeping a pleasant smile on his face with hands stuffed in his coat, he addressed the crowd. Thank you, Shiho. Welcome everyone. I hope that for most of you what I am about to say is mostly review. The redhead begins neutrally before gesturing to a stack of books next to the demonstration table. This stack of Fuinjutsu texts represent the 10 levels of Fuinjutsu. As a Fuinjutsu master, I have a proficiency with all 10 of them. What we will be discussing today, however, can all be found in the first volume. When you receive your score today, it will assign you a ceiling rank from 1 to 10. This rank is partially to make you aware of your proficiency and establish objectively where your Fuinjutsu skill stands. It also serves as a mark of authority to handle certain tasks on missions and within the village. The reason for this will be explained in more detail later. The rankings are as follows. The first level and corresponding volume means you have mastery of the basic of basics, seal recognition, the foundational languages of seals, culminating in the storage seal. The second is an introduction in synchronized and localized reactions, i.e. explosive tags, as well as building multifaceted arrays. Level 3 of his Fuinjutsu books is about manipulating chakra networks on a basic level. This volume outlines the principles for how chakra suppressor, paralysis seals, shock tags and even resistance seals work, how they connected to the chakra system and the effects on the body. The volume includes a detailed diagram of the chakra system along with the placement of every tenketsu. Beyond this level is the intermediate level. Most of you that have dabbled in sealing long enough may know bits and pieces but lack mastery of these levels. Level 4 covers the beginnings of barrier and other security seals, include methods to detect chakra and motion. The fifth level expands intermediate sealing theory. It includes an understanding of variant sealing languages, ideas about chakra and a start on log and algorithmic seals. This is also when elemental ninjutsu begins entering Fuinjutsu, focusing mainly on infusing elements into barriers and ideas on how to suppress jutsu. The sixth level is focused on application of seals involving techniques on increasing the speed you write, how to write on the move, how to etch seals into hard surfaces, such as rocks or foundations, to increase their stability. The technique, called chakra engraving, allows for a concentrated microblade of chakra to be made via a conduit. Chakra etching is rare because it takes a long time compared to the ink-based or the materialization methods, but they were longer lasting and more secure from outside influenced as it took another etching to interact with the seal. It also required a good bit of chakra control, comparable to that of a medical ninja. The seventh level is about linking and merging sealing arrays, how to make different arrays compatible enough to be merged or how to build the bridge if they weren't. It also focuses on other methods of activation like timers or changes in weight or temperature. There were several non-chakra methods to activate seals. Experts could even use emotional states to activate a seal. This requires an understanding of the more theoretical side of Fuinjutsu. The evaluation book includes even more advanced symbols and sealing languages. The final tier of levels and corresponding evaluation volumes are for experts, culminating in the 10th level, which grants mastery. It goes without saying that these topics are restricted and few of you have even close to the right skill set or temperament to use them. The 8th level concerns Fuinjutsu, how to create them, how to counter them. It also includes how to expand and condense arrays, how to see full arrays without activating the seals, and methods of seal concealment and cloaking. And before you ask, not all Fuinjutsu are the same and not all have anything in common with the more infamous one some of you have heard of. But you can learn more about that when you are ready. Level 9 involves the theories behind spacetime Fuinjutsu/ninjutsu. Mostly it covers summoning and advancing storage seals to create stable pocket dimensions. Finally, Level 10 well. Haruki trailed off and observed the audience. "I'll let you work to find that out," he said, much to the audience's obvious disappointment. "But enough about the divisions. By the end you should all be able to tell me the significance of sealing a kunai into a scroll. But first we need to establish 3 truths. What is chakra? Anyone? All right, you there in the blue, tell us your name," he said, pointing to a young man who wore standard Chunin attire with a blue bandana covering his head. The guy had clearly not been expecting to be called on and was probably cursing the red head in his head. Those around him sympathized but were also relieved that they hadn't been singled out. No one expected this to be interactive. "Right, sir, my name is Haru Kajui rank Chunin. Chakra is a form of energy that is made up of 2 parts that can be accessed and controlled to produce other effects, sir. At least that's the simple definition taught at the academy," he answered quickly, hoping he hadn't made a complete fool of himself. "Just so," Haruki said, nodding, his smile still in place. "Excellent recitation, Haru-san." The Chunin smiled at his success as he seated himself again. However, that definition will not suffice for the purpose of Fuinjutsu. There is a significant word missing from the standard definition that impacts your foundational understanding when using Fuinjutsu. At this declaration most of the audience became curious as to what the redhead could mean, none more so than the Chunin Academy staff. "Life," Haruki began as he allowed his chakra to calmly leak out of his coils and blanket the area, letting its flow and vibrance be felt and thrum through the air, washing over them. The audience gasped at the feeling and the implications. Chakra often couldn't be felt so much as perceived except by skilled sensors, but this presence was thick if not oppressive. Refreshing was the closest word to describe it. The fact that all this was coming from this one guy further established respect and awe for the mystery man from the ninja population gathered. Choza reflected on it, truly puzzled him. The Jonin's chakra hinted nothing of the previous night's events and wasn't certain what this meant. The Hokage grinned under his hat. Perhaps there is still some of the old Naruto left after all. Then again, maybe he's just trying to establish himself to those who don't know his skill. Hayashi immersed himself in the feeling. You can sense his experience through the chakra, the feeling as it washed over him. There was a contentment in the flow that hadn't been there before. Chakra is life energy and is made up of our essence of life in both areas of connection, our development of our physical bodies and our strength of spirit. This energy fills the vessels that produce it, the mind and the body, and by training those vessels you can both increase the amount that can create and the amount that can control. Withdrawing his chakra, Haruki made sure he held their attention leaning back against the table. This contributes directly to our understanding of chakra control. I'll give an example. When I was young, I was unable to perform the clone jutsu. To this day it still can give me difficulty, he admitted, catching the surprise on many people's faces. This is due partially to the sheer volume of chakra I had when I was young. Now I know what many of you may be thinking. What does this have to do with Fuinjutsu? And we will get to that, just bear with me. The advice I was told by my academy sensei was to just improve your chakra control. While this wasn't incorrect, it was also supremely unhelpful. What does that mean? Is there a unit that can be manipulated and measured? Admittedly, even knowing that answer would not have helped me much. I was a bit of an idiot, But the point remains that such a casual exploration of what chakra control is will not be sufficient for Fuinjutsu. And honestly, you should consider making the change for the entire curriculum. The benefit to this is that the principle can be applied to other disciplines besides Fuinjutsu. So then we are lead top the next question, what about chakra are we controlling? At his question many of the younger members looked lost as they tried to come up with an answer. This time a dark-haired man with sunglasses raised his hand. At the redhead's acknowledgement he stood to give his thoughts. Yamashiro Aoba, rank Tokubetsu Jonin. Aoba is fine. We manipulate both the form and the nature of chakra as well as the volume used in our jutsu using control. Yes, that's true, but once again that definition is too broad for Fuinjutsu. Remember, chakra is life energy and is influenced directly by the 2 areas of life that formulate it. These are divided into the yang and yin portions of chakra. It is the change of the position and the ratio of these base elements that allow different jutsu to be preformed. Most of this is intuitive, and therein lies the challenge. Each person's unique chakra is mixed at its own ratio and position naturally, and this produces your chakra nature, form called frequency in Fuinjutsu, and volume. This is the reason I, as a jonin, still have trouble with the Bunshin jutsus. My chakra base is skewed sharply toward yang chakra, which very little of is needed for the bunshin jutsu. But again, I bet you are wondering how this affects Fuinjutsu. Bear with me just a bit longer. Haruki raised his hand with 3 fingers extended while still leaning casually against the table. What is the final piece needed to execute a jutsu? Hand seals. This time it was a genin that stood up, though he didn't bother to introduce himself in his excitement. Exactly, but why? Not expecting to have to explain himself further, the genin stumbled over himself. Because, they help change the chakra? That's right, but it's specifically how it changes the chakra that gives us our answer. Haruki said patiently. He decided to not embarrass the eager boy and continued on. Since each person has a predetermined natural state that their chakra appears in, it is extremely difficult to change the ratio of yang and yin to achieve the desired effect. The hand seals provide a mechanism and focus for each person to alter the ratio of a portion of their chakra to accomplish the desired effect is. Your mind alters the yin aspect of the chakra through your will, and your movement focuses the alteration of the yang half of your chakra to the desired amount. The more drastic the change is from the base, the harder it is to accomplish. Over time and use, our chakra grows with us because it is life energy and it responds more to our use of it, gaining flexibility. This is how new affinities and chakra growth occur. This is the basis of chakra and jutsu theory. The audience by this point was enraptured. While some of the concepts were deeper than the surface stuff they were used to, Haruki's simple and relatable explanation was maintaining their interest. Here is why that matters for Fuinjutsu. Haruki continued. Fuinjutsu uses the physical expression of a seal to alter the yang aspect of chakra to the desired amount, and what the seal represents alters the yin aspect. These interactions result in whatever effect occurs from a base chakra being applied to the seal. This means that so long as the seal is clear and balanced appropriately, it can accomplish practically anything for anyone at any time. This reality makes Fuinjutsu one of the most powerful and dangerous arts known to man. To drive this home in each of your minds, I have one final demonstration. Haruki formed the horse hand seal, Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu, water release, water dragon bullet, has 44 hand seals to complete the technique for most practitioners. My level of mastery allows me to accomplish this with just one. Instantly a giant dragon made of water swirled like a waterspout from behind the stage, towering 30 meters in the air and at least 5 meters thick. It roared loudly before launching itself into the middle of the audience. Before the ninja could react, however, the redhead appeared with the scroll that had been laying on the table open between his arms. Suin Fuin, water seal, he said neutrally, and instantly the water dragon he made was absorbed into the seal. The audience as a whole was tense after that display while the redhead made his way back to the stage. Now, I would wager that not many of you can perform the same jutsu I just did, and even less could with the same proficiency. If you attempted it, the jutsu would simply fail because you only partially completed the change that was necessary, because you only used one hand seal. Now let me ask you this, how many of you can use a sealing scroll despite not knowing how it works mechanically? The look on every person's face, except the most experienced, transformed from contemplative to fascinated terror. Exactly. Chakra applied to a seal will execute the seal that is present, whether it is complete or not. So never, and I mean never, experiment with Fuinjutsu until you have mastery of the level you are on. This is why the levels exist. You will only get yourself and others killed. This also means don't apply chakra to a seal you can't read or don't understand. Any questions? Seeing that most of the audience was still processing what he just said, Haruki started walking back down the stage steps. Good, well, if you have any later you can come find me and I'll do my best to answer or direct you to where you can get an answer. Now you are dismissed to take your examination. The test will begin in 30 minutes. Meanwhile, in the forest of death, the real Kazuma Haruki began training in earnest. The past couple of days he had been pushing his body to the brink and experimenting with ninjutsu. He had to be careful not to overdo it though. His next priority was to confirm that he could still summon and use Sage Mode. What was most critical besides recovering from his battle was finish expanding his repertoire that was now limited due to his need to hide critical facts about himself. Orochimaru's alterations had more than made up for his limits in power, though he still wasn't comfortable with the price that the knowledge to do this came at. Haruki was confident that he was beginning to get a handle on his new ninjutsu skills. Of my 3 summoning contracts I can only use one, it's about time I checked in. Which means, I can only use one form of Sage Mode. Well, here goes nothing. Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique. Haruki flashed through hand seals and bit his thumb, drawing blood before slamming his hand on the ground. The usual seal array appeared on the ground, however, the pull of the chakra was pulling on him, not whoever was on the other side. At that realization, Haruki vanished in a puff of smoke. The next thing that Haruki felt was the rush of wind and a chill grow across his body. Taking in his surroundings, it was quite plain what had happened. Whenever the summoning jutsu is preformed by someone unbound by a contract, the seal pulls them to the most compatible partner available. He was currently in a cliff side facing a ravine where another cliff met his gaze several hundred meters away. He could not see the bottom of the ravine as it was obscured by a fog, and he could just barely see the sky high above. Air currents of different amounts of force streamed through the crack in what was now unmistakably a mountain. I suppose at this point in time I haven't actually made contact with any of them. Which means, it would draw me to the one I was most compatible in chakra to. This is definitely not Ruchi Cave or Mount Mayaboku or Shikatsu Forest. Haruki had never been to the Miho Pine Grove on Mt. Miho in his previous time. The contract he made with the Hawks was made after the war had already begun and he was undercover in IWA. It was just as likely that his place was somewhere altogether new. Behind Haruki there was a cave that had not floor. The cavern stretched on far past his sight. What do you think, Kuruma? There is no way to find out other than to go forward. Still, it's probably best to be cautious. Not all summons are looking for partners and you could find yourself in store for a fight. The fox reasoned lazily, not particularly concerned. Haruki nodded and began molding chakra before suddenly jumping backwards away from the edge as a hail of seven came out of the darkness and impacted the ground where he stood. Ho ho, this one has good reflexes, Enai-san. Came a high-pitched scraggly voice from the darkness that echoed around the room. Indeed. Came a much deeper reply from behind the redhead from the cliffside. I think, however, our intruder is not as much a threat as we first supposed. Haruki knew that voice even before he turned. Careful to not turn too quickly, Haruki pivoted so that he could see in both directions. He was now in the shadow of a massive hawk whose eye was fixed on the redhead. What do you mean, Enai-san? We could feel his chakra from all the way back at the nest. Yes, but this man matches the Great Mother's description besides his attempt at disguise. There is no doubt that he is our yet-to-be summoner. Haruki smirked and relaxed his stance. Nothing ever could fool your eyes, Takarashi. How is Kazeheim Bakon doing? The massive hawk landed with a rush of wind and without a crash or shake. His towering form resting unconcerned without removing his says from the redhead. Your use of the Great Mother's given name in such a casual manner give credence to my conclusion. She speaks highly of your skills and your character, Naruto-sama. You seem unsurprised by my ability to see you. Why did you wear such a disguise? To be honest, I wasn't expecting to be called here when I tried to summon you. As to my disguise, well, it complicated. Ho ho, and we are just supposed to take your word for it. The Great Mother can be quite an airhead sometimes. She could have inflated her perceptions of you. Came a voice from beside him as a much smaller and chubbier bird landed on Haruki's shoulder. To his credit, Haruki didn't outwardly react to the snobbish and shrill voice. Inwardly he was marveling at the sheer skill it must take for that bird to be so quiet. Mama, Ryanosuke. Don't be so harsh on Bakon. Here has some jerky. Haruki says, pulling out some jerky from his rations seal from his pocket and tossing it to him. The plump bird immediately snatched it out of the air. What can we do for you, Naruto-sama? Honestly, I was just trying to check in and fill whomever in on the situation at hand. I didn't know what I would find. Haruki explained. We have been expecting you for a little while now. One day your name appeared faded on one of the seal tags hanging from the Great Mother's nesting tree. She said the winds told her who you were and that you would come to explain yourself to us. She wouldn't tell us much else other than you were an honorable and powerful warrior worthy of our clan's support. Takarashi said, politely explaining the circumstances, though there was definite scrutiny hidden behind his words. It was certain that the respect he had for the sage was the only reason Haruki wasn't under attack at the moment. Perhaps then I can offer this as assurance that I am who she claimed I was. Haruki said as his eyes changed and his feet left the cavern floor. The hawk boss eye widened at the sight as Ryanosuke squawked. Takarashi, I need your help, and I have a long story to tell you. Hours later in the Forest of Death. With an explosion of smoke, Haruki found himself back in the clearing in the Forest of Death right where he had left. Well, nothing to do now but train on the basics. Can't ever hone those enough. Haruki created about 200 clones, half of them would go through the taijutsu katas he knew. His remaining clones split off into 4 groups of 25, they would again work on chakra control, kenjutsu, nature manipulation, and fuinjutsu. He didn't have time to work on genjutsu right now. Haruki knew that because of his massive reserves, doing things like genjutsu and medical jutsu would be impossible. However, when Orochimaru altered his genetic makeup, and he mastered Kurama's chakra, Haruki achieved a level of mastery over his chakra that was thought impossible for someone with his volume. He could flux his chakra to match or complement any foreign chakra that entered his system, making most genjutsu pointless against him. This also enabled himself to use his own version of medical ninjutsu, which was partly why he didn't like referring to it as such, but that wasn't really relevant at this point. However, he still needed to maintain this ridicule's level of chakra control. So his clones would do a mixture of exercises. Most of them would run around on a body of water with several large rocks sticking to different areas of the body while balancing senbon or kunai on his fingers with chakra. While his clones were doing that, Haruki would work on physical conditioning and strength, training his body to withstand high-speed combat. He would do a 15-mile run, 400 push-ups, 400 sit-ups, 200 pull-ups, 1,000 squats, 500 kicks and 500 punches without chakra enhancement while his resistance seals were active. While Haruki was considered a ninjutsu specialist, he had strong hopes that he could also match the likes Lee and Guy in taijutsu and Kisame in kenjutsu. Then he would do his own mixed discipline challenge to really push himself. Just you wait, old man, I'll give you such a thrashing they will have no choice but to let me go. Anko by nature was a curious person. The need to know had been one of the reasons that she became as skilled as she was at intelligence gathering and was chosen by Orochimaru to be his apprentice. Though she would never admit it, that part of her only grew under his tutelage. That's why when she felt a massive disturbance of chakra deep in her usual place of solitude to murder and destroy to her heart's content, she had to investigate. When she finally reached the source of the disturbance, she had a front row seat to an impressive sight. She immediately recognized it was Haruki, but what he was doing was beyond intense. The man was currently balancing on a kunai with one finger as he did several one-armed push-ups. Sticking to his body were several decently sized rocks that Blonde was no doubt using chakra to keep in place. Balanced on his feet were 2 large 6-foot boulders, one for each foot. He was currently blindfolded with Haitiaid over his eyes, while several clones of some kind were standing around him in a circle. Around his body she could see 3 condensed rings of wind chakra that expanded and retracted at different intervals. Upon closer inspection she noticed that the boulders were actually sitting on a cushion of air between their surface and his feet. The redhead was only wearing a pair of pants currently as he worked, allowing Anko to see a physique that while not bulky was extremely well defined. It was lithe, firm and reminded her of a panther or some kind of powerful predator, no doubt his body trained for a combination of intense speed and strength. She could see the ripple of his muscles every time he moved. Watching him caused an unusual heat to rise to her cheeks. Though that was dispelled as she examined what seemed to be a rather gruesome scar on his left side. Now that was a story she wanted the answer to. It was after all the only blemish on his body. Deciding that he was sufficiently distracted that she wouldn't be noticed, Anko began some impromptu surveillance on everyone's favorite mystery man. After all, in a couple of days, everyone that mattered would get to see what he was made of anyway. 20 minutes later, he was still going at his workout routine. As she watched she saw the clones that were surrounding him take out several kunai and without warning started launching them at him. She wouldn't have believed it if she didn't see it, but the rings of wind fluxed to block each projectile that came and Haruki didn't break his rhythm the entire time. A few he couldn't block since they were coated with cut through the protective rings, so he dodged, using the boulder's connection to his feet as a counterbalance to each other as he leaned his body from one side to the other as he dodged the kunai. In all her years Anko had never seen anyone who had such a ridiculously dangerous training regime. There were some that came close, but those were not as multidisciplined as this. She licked her lips, grinning like a predatory as an idea of what else was dangerous about this man came into her mind. She watched him for what seemed like hours but in truth was only about 30 minutes as the man continued training. When it was done the clones dispelled and the man kicked the boulders off himself, shattering them, and the rocks on his body dropped. Anko readied herself, pulling out 3 kunai. This is just too good of a chance to pass up. This'll be fun. With Haruki. How long is she going to watch, I wonder? Haruki thought as he shook out his arms. He could have done more, but he still had more to do in his training for the day and didn't want to risk too much with this particular person as an audience. Anko had always been a wild card. However, as he was walking back to put his clothes back on, Haruki heard the distinct whistling of kunai cutting the air, a sound he had become intimately familiar with. I just had to ask. He thought catching the only one didn't block with wind chakra and send it back with double the speed. She can probably dodge that, and maybe that will encourage her to come out so I can find out what exactly she wants. Not a moment later the woman appeared in a crouch at the base of the tree with a kunai in hand and a wicked smile on her face. She was wearing clothing that could be considered more of a lack thereof than anything else, which was typical for her. She had on a dark orange miniskirt that barely covered her unmentionables, a fishnet shirt that once again did really nothing to cover her. It was especially bad since she had no bra under it as far as Haruki could see. Over that she had a tan trench coat that covered just enough of her breasts that Haruki could not see her nipples. She was wearing a pair of standard shinobi sandals with shin guards over them and had a Konoha headband on her head that held up dark purple hair in a pineapple hairstyle, though he would never actually describe it that way to her. He valued his genitals more than that. Hey ya Red, how's it Hanjin? She began relaxing as she stood up, not losing her slight off-putting smirk but stowing the kunai in her trench coat pocket. What do you want, Anko? Haruki began tiredly. He didn't mean to be rude, but he wasn't in the mood to be bothered right now. He didn't bother attempting to dress. It was obvious by her body language that she would likely pounce on the opportunity. She wasn't very good at restraining herself when she wanted to fight. I was just curious to see who was training out here is all, Anko said in a pout. Really? I mean, when you get a new neighbor it's common courtesy to greet them. Neighbor, huh? So, you train out here too? Haruki responded, putting a small smile on his face while feigning ignorance. Yup. Anko said, smiling at him. It's such a great place, all the creatures there that would like nothing more than to kill you, the giant tigers that love to feast on human flesh, spiders, man-eating plants. As Anko continued to list off all of the amazing animals that could be found within the forest, Haruki was thinking about other things. Haruki mentally tallied up what he knew about the woman for the inevitable sparring session that would happen. Now Jonin in rank, former apprentice of Orochimaru, hence a snake summoner and a ninjutsu specialist, had a boisterous personality, liked to use mind games to mess with people's heads, skilled in torture, interrogation and intelligence gathering. So overall, a less insane but probably more violent version of Orochimaru. She may have been the apprentice of the snake Sannin, but Haruki in his own way could be considered the apprentice of all three of the Sannin. He shouldn't need to show too much to handle her so long as he was careful. Hey Red, are you listening to me? She shouted, flinging the same kunai from earlier only for it to be deflected to the side well before it reached him. One of Haruki's cerulean eyes twitched in annoyance. You know. I told you my name so you would use it. Anko's grin threatened to split her face. I know. He sighed. There was no other way around this. Fine. You want a spar, let's get this over with. It was impossible for her mouth to get wider. I knew you were a quick learner. I love a good game of death tag and haven't gotten to play in a while. She got in a ready stance, drawing a kunai from her trench coat again. When do we start? We already have. A voice said from behind him. Boom. The ground exploded underneath him from what was likely a paper bomb. Tell you what, if you win, they'll show you a good time later. She said in sultry voice as she approached the pillar of smoke from the explosion she just made. Darling, I'm glad you thought that our first time fighting should be accompanied by fireworks, but I hate to tell you, you're just not my type. Anko whipped her head around and saw the redhead casually leaning against a tree looking bored. Not one to be outdone, Anko doubled down on her attempt to fluster the redhead meat slab. In a husky voice she breathed out, are you sure about that? As she positioned herself in a clearly sexual manner, showing off how full her breasts were tauntingly. I've seen better. Came the neutral and honest reply as the man rolled his right shoulder and popped his neck before settling in a loose stance. His body was primed and ready, he would need to scale himself back accordingly for his opponent. Oh? She sensually licked her lips. Sounds like my kind of woman. Haruki smirked. That was the Anko he knew. Confident, definitely too forward, stubborn and relentless, mischievous and terrifying even to her friends, but most of all she was loyal as they come despite what others may say. She was also a very attractive woman, but thinking of her in any sexual way just weirded him out. Banishing those thoughts from his mind while Kurama chuckled deep in his mind, Haruki launched himself at the saucy woman. In a blink his fist was embedded in her face, which immediately exploded into mud. This may be a bit too much power. Well, see how it goes. Damn Red, that's cold going for a woman's face. Are you trying to damage my womanly charm? Anko asked playfully, dropping down out of a tree from behind him. She went through some hand seals, then her and 3 other versions of herself appeared and dashed towards him. You know, charging at an opponent who is clearly superior to you is just stupid, Haruki said with a large grin on his face. Perhaps he could loosen up just a bit. In burst of pure speed he was on the first clone before she realized he had moved and already punched through its body. He appeared behind the second that had begun to change course, burying his heel in her skull before dodging a few kunai thrown by the last. It appeared she had realized that his raw strength was going to be too much for low-level clones. Haruki snatched a kunai out of the air and returned it just as he had done earlier to end the last clone before turning to the original that was circling him. Haruki braced himself for a taijutsu barrage, but was instead assaulted by a sudden rainfall of steel-headed. He dodged and looked back only to find most of them vanishing as soon as they hit the ground. Shuriken Kage Bunshin then. Before Haruki landed his dodge, he created 3 smokeless shadow clones in midair. My turn, let's see what you got. Lesson 1 Taijutsu. They speedily moved towards the snake summoner and her copies with kunai in their fists, as Haruki backed off to observe for a moment. Despite the fact that she was outnumbered, she did not appear at any moment to be overwhelmed. While her snake-style taijutsu was similar to Orochimaru's, he favored speed with flexibility over strength. She preferred short vicious strikes that were almost too fast to dodge. After a few exchanged blows, she twisted around one of the clone's strikes and dispelled it with a kunai through the eye, before flexibly using an overextended fist from another as a stepping stone and leapt into the air. Senyajoshu, hidden shadow snake hands, she called out as snakes extended from her hands and dispelled the clone she had as a springboard. As she landed she bent over backwards, appearing not to have a spine, to avoid being decapitated, and in the same movement raised a foot and slammed it into the throat of the last clone. Damn! She spun the kunai around her finger as she called out, is that all you've got, Red? Alright, let's take it up a notch. Lesson 2 Ninjutsu. Haruki shouted, his face lit up with a smirk his younger counterpart would be proud of. Haruki launched some shuriken he had retrieved from his pouch. He coiled his arm back after releasing and thrust it forward, shouting a jutsu. He didn't need to weave signs for this one anymore. Futon, Repusho. Wind release, wind gale palm. The shuriken, which had already been going forward at high speeds, soon became a nothing more than a streak of silver as they headed for Anko. The snake summoner jumped out of the way, knowing how dangerous Haruki was when he used his wind element for anything. However, Haruki knew Anko would dodge. After all, Anko was not a Jonin-level shinobi for nothing and had in fact counted on him dodging. Haruki put in a small but intense burst of highly concentrated chakra into his legs, literally disappearing and reappearing right in front of Anko. The blue-eyed shinobi aimed a punch at her solar plexus. Anko swatted it to the side and downward in the hopes of knocking him off balance. No such luck, as Haruki went down and pushed himself into a handstand, launching a kick that managed to hit Anko in the face, forcing her to lean back. Pushing himself into a flip, Haruki went for an axe kick to Anko's collarbone. Anko put up both arms to guard and immediately regretted it as she was forced to a knee. God damn, his stupid strength is ridiculous. He is likely still holding back. Anko grabbed onto Haruki's leg with both hands and was about to flip the man over. However, Naruto used his other leg to jump up and over Anko, using her grip to keep himself balanced, and launched a kick to her face. Anko was forced to let go of Haruki's leg as she tilted her head to the side and dodged the kick. She turned around and managed to kick Haruki in the chest on the man's way down, but he moved with the blow and went into a series of flips as he jumped away to gain some distance. Anko took out a kunai and threw it at the redhead, going through a few hand seals as he shouted, Ninpu, kunai kage bushin no jutsu. Ninja art, kunai shadow clone jutsu. 1 kunai multiplied into 24 kunai as they all headed straight for Haruki. Said shinobi just looked at them with a smirk, forming the horse hand seal before calling out his jutsu. Suitun, Suijin Hiki. Water release, water encampment wall. A large wall of water formed around Haruki, blocking the kunai. Once Haruki heard the popping of kunai being dispelled and he formed the horse hand seal again. Suitun, Suryuden no jutsu. Water release, water dragon jutsu. The wall of water soon began to swirl around Haruki, before taking the shape of a 30-meter water dragon with glowing yellow eyes. As soon as it did, Haruki created a Kage Bushin seamlessly and had it form one hand seal as the water dragon launched itself towards Anko. Futon, Renkuden. Wind release, wind bullet. The clone smashed a fist into its stomach and shot a large ball of compressed wind out of its mouth. It went straight for the water dragon. The water dragon's power and speed were soon increased as the Renkuden merged with it as it headed towards Anko, said Snake Summoner, swearing enough to make a sailor blush as she jumped out of the way. The water dragon maid slammed into the trees behind her and smashed them to bits, which was a testament to the combination's power. These were Forest of Death-sized trees after all. With a loud crash, water erupted everywhere, looking something akin to a large explosion. Using the distraction caused by his jutsu, Haruki threw several kunai and went through the hand signs Anko had used earlier, even though it wasn't strictly necessary at his level. Ninpu, Kunai Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Ninja Art, Kunai Shadow Clone Jutsu. 1 kunai became 41 kunai as they headed for the still airborne Anko. Noticing the kunai, the purple-haired kunoichi went through her own hand seals in an attempt not to become a pin cushion. A large number of snakes were released from her sleeve, wrapped around the nearest branch and pulled her out of the way. She sprung off the side of the tree as the snakes returned and flipped to land before sprinting towards the redhead, a serious expression on her face. "Ah, back to taijutsu are we? That didn't work out so well for you last time." Haruki jabbed, but she gave no reply, pouring all her concentration on weaving through and blocking his strikes. Their respective attack speeds had escalated as they traded blows in close quarters, as did their inherent risk-taking. While blocking a blow to the side of the head, Anko released a kunai from up her sleeve, likely from a seal, and slashed across Haruki. He managed to dodge mostly, but the very tip nicked part of his arm. She did another backflip after a single handstand and put some distance between them after realizing that the redhead was no more tired or vulnerable than when they started. Anko could tell he was starting to increase his intensity, and if even one of those got a clean hit on her, she was in trouble. As she looked at Haruki, she brought up the kunai to her face and lewdly licked off my blood, coating it. Her voice went back to the same husky tone from earlier as she said, you taste good, mysterious wonder. You'll have to get more of that. Does that mean you're free tonight, hot stuff? Haruki said back, giving as good as he got. Banter aside, if he were anyone else, that slip-up would have been the end for him. Good thing he was in fact himself. Haruki brushed off his arm, drawing attention to the already healed wound. His chakra had already burned out the poison, even if it had been able to affect him. Time to show off, he thought to himself with a smirk. In quick succession, his right and left hands went through separate seals. He saw her tense her leg muscles, ready to dodge. She wouldn't move yet as she had no idea what the jutsu might be. If she committed a direction, it would only seal her fate. Futon, Cho no Habutaki. Wind release, butterflies flap. Raitun, Suzumabachi no Sashi Kizu. Lightning release, wasps sting. A wall of wind descended like a sheet to fill the whole clearing, while the ground became alight with lightning chakra blades of grass exploding upward toward the woman. This combination was actually used for capture more than eliminating the target. Anko began to realize this as she failed to dodge the wind wall and was flattened into the barrage of electricity. Rather than a shock, she felt numb and found it difficult to move. Her ears were ringing from the pressure difference. "What did you do to me?" she yelled as she stood. Now. That's for me to know and you to find out," Haruki said, grinning. Time to end this. He conjured a wind blade and sent it toward her. She spun away to dodge, acting out of instinct more than anything else. Right into his fist. As her head snapped back, disorienting her, Haruki pushed his advantage, immediately striking at her shoulder and sternum before attempting to knee her in the stomach. She had recovered by then and with a cough raised her arms to block his knee and pushed him back. As Haruki regained his balance, she spat blood in his eye and charged forward as Haruki flinched, landing an elbow in his face and a vicious uppercut to his chin that caused his neck to snap backwards with a horrible cracking sound that rang throughout the arena, causing Haruki to dispel. With almost perfect timing, as Haruki received the memories from the clone, he leapt from beneath the earth, intent on landing an uppercut of my own. However, the split second made the difference as she had already leapt into the air, throwing 2 kunai towards me and yelling out "Kunai Kage Bunshin." With a wrench of raw futon chakra, Haruki gracefully changed directions in midair and landed in a heavy crouch with a huge grin on my face. I haven't had a fun spar like this in forever. Man, I wish I had gotten to fight with her before. He thought to himself. All of a sudden, he had to lean back to avoid another Anko, likely the original, leaping from beneath the earth to land another uppercut. He backflipped out of her reach in a move reminiscent of her own, but this was exactly what she had been waiting for. Senjutsu, hidden shadow snake hands. She called out victoriously as a bunch of snakes streamed from her sleeves and shot towards Haruki, quickly wrapping around his body and hissing ominously. She squeezed the snakes binding me tighter and said ominously, "Give up now, Red, my snakes are already hungry. I'd hate it if one of them decided to take a bite out of you." The snakes hissed ominously, completing a rather scary effect. "Aren't you curious how I'm still able to move?" Haruki asked calmly even as the snakes tried to squeeze him. He wasn't worried. He sparred bare-handed with Tsunade. The snakes couldn't hurt him through constriction no matter how hard they tried. Anko frowned at the man, hardly. Poison immunity, though not common, is to be expected whenever you use them. You always have to plan for your poison failing you. Given your previous role, it is more than likely that you have an immunity to most poisons used in the ninja world today, and I already know of your healing abilities and medical ninjutsu. However, that doesn't mean I don't have questions. Like how you are this strong of a shinobi that you're still holding back when I'm going all out. I'm not the strongest out there, but I was trained by a sannin. Now without his stupid hiki I'm even stronger, and yet you are treating me like a fresh genin. How is someone as strong as you a mystery to everyone? Her eyes bore into him, though he made no attempt to look away, but that doesn't really matter. The old man trusts you and you helped me out. So I don't really care that much, I'm just curious. Then there is what you are doing all the way out here. Aren't you supposed to be administering the ceiling test today? I mean, I'm going on a day where it'll be less crowded, but you are kinda the main guy, right? How did you get to ditch? Haruki looked sheepish as she brought up him ditching work. Well, I have to face the old man soon and I needed to train. I figured a clone could handle my other duties. Anko blinked. Wait. You sent a clone to administer the Fuinjutsu test. Do you have any idea how the Sandaime is going to take that if he finds out? He's not going to find out. The clone should have enough chakra to handle anything that comes up, and if not, I trust my assistant. The test should be well underway by this point. Haruki said in an annoyed huff while rolling his eyes. Anko's face split into a wide grin. Well, Red, it's your unlucky day. See, you are a man of many secrets, and of those many secrets right now, I want to know one. Who gave the cure for our good friend Hayate? You're a super spy master after all. I'm sure you have a clue. Either you tell me something or I'm telling the Sandaime. Haruki's face maintained a neutral smile. Interesting choice. How about I offer you another one instead? Futon or Raiton? Anko's eyes widened as she felt the release of chakra and attempted to jump away. Too late. Haruki called out calmly, Raiton, Jibashi, lightning release, electromagnetic murder. Her face immediately changed to horror as lightning poured down Haruki's arms and shocked her snakes, shocking her by conduction as well. She dispelled them at once, but didn't realize that she was standing in a puddle from Haruki's earlier Tsuryuden technique, a fact she was shockingly reminded of when she was electrocuted. She leapt away, her hair frazzled and a murderous expression on her face. She had taken too many heavy hits. By comparison, he had only been briefly captured. Understandably, she lost her cool at this point. Fine time to go all in. You think I'm going to let you treat me like a genin, pissant? Well, then you've got another thing coming. She bit into one of her cinched hands and started forming a very familiar set of hand seals. Simultaneous cries rang out around the arena, Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique. And Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique. And all vision was obscured by the cloud from their techniques. When the smoke cleared, Anko stood atop a red cobra with a scared right eye, and much to Anko's surprise, Haruki stood atop a large brown hawk with a golden beak. Anko! Though we agreed you would not summon me unless your life depended on it. Garaga bellowed, addressing the woman on top his head. An instant later, however, he spread his neck and coiled sharply as he fixed his eye on his opponent. Garaga was deathly still. There had better be a good reason for calling me here, especially if we are fighting against him. Anko was shocked by Garaga's reaction. The snake had been harsh and cocky for as long as she had known him. While he didn't openly oppose Manda, he wasn't afraid of him either, which was why she went along with his attitude. He typically had the power to back it up too. But now he was on high alert and held a healthy fear for their opponent. Did he know Haruki? As Anko assessed the opponent, it became clear that Gaaraga was focused far more on Red's partner. The giant hawk was incredibly still with its head cocked to the side. Its giant silver-colored eye pinning them in place, taking in every bit of detail it could perceive. She felt naked before his gaze. Then it spoke. "Nah, Haruki Dano, for what reason have you called upon me so soon since our last meeting?" Takarashi spoke in a very polite manner. His voice sounded very refined though deep. It did nothing to lessen his overwhelming presence. "Sorry, Takarashi Dano. As you know, I am training for a large confrontation. My friend over there is aligned with the Snake Clan and is helping me train. It has been a while since we have fought together and I did not want our compatibility to grow rusty. This is just training, no need to get serious." A sound argument. "Very well, I shall assist you. You have select excellent opponents to hone your skills against. I can tell. They were quick to perceive how completely outmatched they are against us." The hawk complimented his eye, never blinking or wavering. "Ah, is that you, Gaaraga? It has been some time since we crossed paths. Still giving Manda trouble, I hope?" The hawk boss added in a slightly smug tone, though nothing changed about his posture. "Gaaraga, you know that guy?" Anko asked, gesturing toward the giant hawk and bending over to look at her summons. "Anko, shut up and focus. Do not take your eyes off of him. I don't know how you managed to find someone who could sum him, but that beside the point. Is what the summers say true? Are we just here to train?" Gaaraga hissed in a hushed tone. I mean yeah, but what's the deal?" Anko said, now far more alert and on guard than before. Despite the casual response, Gaaraga didn't relax one bit. "Good, I'll only maim you instead of eating you for this then. Anko, our opponent, is the one being even Manda fears. The hawk boss Takarashi. He is not an opponent to be taken lightly. Do not underestimate him. Despite his polite and reasonable exterior, that bird is a ruthless monster. Don't you worry, Takarashi. I have not given that worm my allegiance." Gaaraga bellowed out in his usual disrespectful bluster. "That's good. Perhaps now I won't have to rend you skin to ribbons with my talons. Since I'm in such a good mood, I'll even let you keep your remaining eye. How's that sound?" Takarashi replied politely as he flexed his right talon. You haven't changed much. Be warned. If you escalate this, I'll take you with me," Gaaraga declared, baring his fangs in a hiss. Ma. I don't think that will be necessary after all this, just a spar," Haruki said, holding his arms out in a placating gesture before his eyes sharpened. "But that doesn't mean we have to go easy either. Anko, hold on." The cobra shouted as the ducked and weaved, invisible blades of wind cleaving through the space they just were. The giant snake thumped his tail, filling the area with a dust cloud to hide their movements. "It's not much, but it might buy us a second." Weaving through the trees, Gaaraga twisted and shot a blast of venom into the cloud. Just in time too, as around them hundreds of large feathers pierced every surface they came in contact with as if they were blades. "Anko!" he shouted, rearing back. "You got it," she said, flashing through hand seals Katan, Riwenden no Jutsu, Katan, Flame Dragon Bullet. A large dragon of fire 5 meters wide launched from her mouth and ignited the venom while blazing its way to their target. When the smoke cleared, though, it was evident she had missed and just hit the tree the bird was perched on, but they were nowhere to be seen. "Above!" Gaaraga yelled. And launched himself to the side by coiling and reeling himself quicker than something of his size had any right to. Just in time again, as a large talon grasped the ground right where he had been a moment before, ripping up a monstrous chunk. And then the pressure wave hit them. They endured it even though there were wind blades within the blast. "Oh, very good, Gaaraga, that battle-sharp mind hasn't faded yet. Good. But tell me," that polite inquisitive voice echoed through the dust kicked up by the wind. The wind cleared to reveal the golden beak of the hawk and then his head, his unblinking eye clearly fixed on them. "How long can you keep it up, I wonder?" Even as he finished, Takarashi brought his wings back and Gaaraga's eye widened. "Anko, earth wall now!" The red cobra shouted as he coiled in on himself as much as possible. "Too late. Senpu, Teiko no Tensei, Sage Art, Heaven's Kite." Takarashi flapped his wings forward and Anko's ears popped. All of the air together shifted in front of the hawk and fled before him. Stronger than a hurricane, the trees were stripped of bark and may knocked over. Anko and her summons were lifted of the ground, aflung with the debris in a maelstrom. Both disappeared into the chaos created by the collateral damage. Takarashi remained in position before he was smacked hard by his summoner on the beak, causing him to tip forward slight. I thought I told you this was training. Sage arts are too much. Haruki barked in frustration. The hawk rubbed his beak with his wing before folding his wings back. Quite right, sir. I am sorry about that. It's just when I see a snake I quite lose myself in the moment. It has been a while since I've had a decent challenge, be that as it may. We need to go find them. Worst case scenario, we blew them into one of the truly dangerous areas of the forest and they likely aren't in any position to be dealing with it. With a mighty flap of his wings, the two were instantly skyward. It really was a good thing Training Ground 44 was so far from the village proper. The last thing he needed was to blow his cover with the old man by causing an incident with accidental damage. When Anko came to, she was hanging upside down from a tree. Immediately she felt pain from her side as well as from her leg that was tied up in whatever was keeping her hanging. She could make out Garaga's form below her. Well, that was a good sign, at least he wasn't dispelled. She was beginning to understand her summon's warnings. That creature was ridiculously fast and the raw power it possessed. It could have slaughtered them if it had wanted. And Haruki had mastered that thing. The man must be a monster in his own right. Her hearing and balance were shot in one ear and she was bleeding a bit. Her leg was dislocated and broken in multiple places. The pain would probably be worse if she still wasn't numb from Haruki's right-hand technique earlier. She looked up to examine her leg and then froze as she realized where she was. Her leg was wrapped in a gooey, sticky white thread-like substance. And above it, staring with 8 empty eyes, what a giant man-sized spider. As Anko realized the implication of exactly which part of the forest of death, she concludes that the hawk had blown them to the far north side in the darker overgrown section. A place even she avoided. This was spider territory. The creatures were nasty to deal with when it was just one of them, but in this portion of the forest there were hundreds of them. They weren't stupid either. They knew how to hunt, and though they held no love for each other, the spiders factored in each of their brethren's efforts when moving. Always hungry, always breeding, these monsters were held back by regular missions from the Umbu and Jonin to keep them contained to this area. And they were in their nest, so why weren't they descending upon her to devour her now? Garaga, are you awake? Anko whispered through the pain, even talking hurt. Keep quiet, kid. We don't want to set them off. Our arrival was sudden and violent. The only reason you are still alive and I haven't unsummoned is because they are to worry of us for the moment. The moment they think the danger has passed, we are toast. The truth is that neither of us is in a position to fight our way out. I need to recover before I try to break the amount of webbing I'm wrapped up in. Our best bet is wait for your friend to come get you, then I can get the hell out of here. If they come for us before then, we make our stand then. The snake said back in his own quiet way. They could hear the rustling and chittering of the horde as it skirted the edge of the new clearing. Webbing was everywhere. They kept their silence for what seemed like an hour, but in reality was only 5 minutes. Then a flare of pain burst through Anko and she cried out. Lurch had come from her leg, and when she looked up, she saw the spider from before had crawled to where her strand connected to the rest of the web and was hoisting her up, its mandibles chattering in what she could only assume was excitement and hunger. Like hell, this is how I go. I refuse to be bug food. Anko summoned another kunai from her arm and poured chakra into it. She flung it at the strand, cutting it and causing her to free fall. In that moment no less than 7 bodies launched themselves at her falling form. Damn those creatines. They planned this. There wasn't enough time to substitute and she couldn't reliably shunshin. She closed her eyes waiting for the impact, the struggle to come. But it never came. In fact, she realized she was no longer falling but floating in the air. Looks like I got here in time. Seems Takarashi did a number on you. I am so sorry, Anko. That was Red's voice, wasn't it? Anko sighed in relief as the pain that had been racking her body subsided. It was then instantly replaced by exhaustion. Whoa there. Don't pass out on me, we aren't out of the woods yet. Literally. He said in jovial tone despite the situation. Let's get you patched up. Garaga. Takarashi. Think you two could buy me some time? Anko could tell from the resulting screeching and large crashes what the answer had been. She felt herself be laid down gently and she opened her eyes barely to see the redhead still shirtless and his warm ocean blue eyes staring into hers full of concern and confidence. But then she realized that she was still in the air, and there was something different about his eyes. Sage mode. That's how we were flying. Damn Red, you're good, she croaked out, too tired and injured to do much else. They were floating in the air as if the atmosphere turned into a pillow. He smiled softly at her despite the nickname. You're pretty banged up there. If you were anyone else this would be a problem. Haruki paused as he floated in the lotus position beside her with his hands pressed together. But you have tough chakra coils from living with the curse marks so long. Even better, you've been exposed to my sage mode before. This means if you are as tough as I believe you to be, I'll have you back together in no time. His hands glowed with green chakra with flecks of white in it. This is going to hurt. Haruki said, a grimace. Senpo, kaze no sai kitsugo. Sage art, winds rebinding. Haruki pressed his hands to her body, one on her heart and one on her stomach. Instantly she felt as if her entire chakra system was burning. She tried to scream and thrash but couldn't. The very air around her held her firmly in place as her body rapidly knit itself back together. She felt her leg unscrew itself and lurch back into place. Within a couple of seconds, the chakra left her system, and other than extreme exhaustion she felt fine. Haruki on the other hand was panting and pouring in sweat. He lowered them to the ground as his sage mode fades. Damn, that's never easy and took far more out of me than it should. You feeling better? Anko just nodded, still processing what just happened. Good, now take a soldier pill, we still go a long way to go. Haruki said and got in a fighting stance, letting his chakra flow out of him and saturate the air around him. Anko quickly popped a pill in from her ninja pack and took in the situation. The entire forest in the area was in tatters. Everywhere she looked she saw broken bits of stone spiders, likely Garaga's work, and shredded remnants of their webs and body parts. Takarashi was dive-bombing the horde from above, crushing them with his talons and slicing them with his wind and wings. The spiders would try to jump on him and he would spiral and fling them off. Garaga was making liberal use of his venom and quick reflexes to stay ahead of the horde's numbers, constantly moving around the field so they couldn't box him in. Despite their individual superiority, it became clear that the sheer volume of enemies was far greater than they initially would have feared, and based in what they knew of the forest, they were in the heart of the spider's domain. You ready? Haruki asked as a small contingent of the monsters speed past the giants looking for easier prey. Oh, how wrong they were. Anko grinned. Hell yeah. And they sprinted together toward their challengers. 3 hours later. Hearing a snap from behind, Haruki rolled to the left, just dodging a giant spider that had tried to land on top of him. Grimacing, Haruki grabbed a kunai and wrapped an explosive tag around it. They had been fighting a running battle with these things for hours. They managed to make it out of their standard territory, but the creature were incised about them. Almost as if they had to eat the two ninjas out of principle now. Garaga and Takarashi covered their retreat as they plowed their way through literal thousands of these monsters. The two giants eventually dispersed to return to their respective realms as they lacked the chakra to remain in this plane. Looking back, it would probably have been wiser to hop on the hawk's back and make a beeline for the exit, but he doubted that the hawk could have defended against all of them with both shinobi in the way. Haruki told himself as soon as he was out of here, he was going to establish in a ceiling barrier to keep them pinned in their section on pain of death. The two had managed to make it back to where they initially started their spar, and Haruki had his equipment, which had been a big help. As the spider began to move towards him, Haruki threw the kunai. It managed to hit the creature right in the left eye, one of its few weak points. The creature shrieked and thrashed in pain, however it still continued to charge after Haruki. Putting his hands in a ram's seal, Haruki activated the explosive tag. He jumped off the branch as the creature's head exploded in a gout of blood and brains. Bouncing from branch to branch, Haruki eventually landed on the ground. He leaned up against the tree, panting as he tried to get a breather. Faint sounds of inhuman screeching rang out in the distance and were growing ever closer. The tense waiting was broken when the woman that had been accompanying him flew past him into a tree, followed by the biggest spider that he had seen yet. It was easily triple the size of a full-grown adult male and was nimbly pursuing Anko, fangs dripping with paralytic venom. Haruki pulled out his ninjato and drove it right through the spider's face, sending the blood of the arachnid spraying all over the place. Swinging his blade upwards with a burst of wind chakra to bolster it, he cut straight through the deadly creature. Anko hurried over to him, spitting on the corpse of the spider as she passed. Damn, these things just don't give up. We can't keep doing this. We've got to have at least cut the population in half, and there are still this many of them. I know what you mean, but can you really say you haven't been having fun? Haruki asked with a smirk. Now red. I like indiscriminate slaughter of my enemies as much as the next girl, but give me a break, I'm ready for some dessert. Plus, she said, suddenly getting serious, even with your strength it would be unwise to try and confront these things at night. No, you're right. Time to wrap this up. The pigment around his eyes began to change. Entering Sage mode with this little chakra left was risky, but it should give him the needed boost to trim their numbers down enough for them to finally escape. Using it early would have given them an advantage sure, but it would not have been as decisive. Damn, he had put some work in today. I sense at least a dozen of the spiders of that same size surrounding the area, watching us. He said, gesturing to the spider corpse in front of them. The slightest disturbance in the air was tracked by him through the entire forest. It was then that he realized the full depth of their spider problem. He could feel the form of the queen in their tunnel as large as Gamabuddha, though they were miles away. They were more organized than before, evolved to take over the wood. We get rid of these and get out of here. Anko nodded and paled slightly. Not going to lie, I am running a little low on chakra to deal with those, and I've been through 2 pills. Haruki propped his ninjato on his shoulder. It would be too risky to take any more, let's make a break for it. They'll come in waves to try and wear us down. You fight until I tell you to run and you follow me out. Keep your eyes peeled for the small ones when we break out, those sneaky bastards like to hide in the canopy and jump you from the shadows. Haruki unsealed a ninjato from a scroll and tossed it to Anko. At Anko's questioning look, Haruki's eyes darted around the area. You're going to need something bigger than kunai. That will just piss them off. Anko scoffed and pulled out a metal rod from a seal in her ninja pack. I don't use this often, but I have it when I need it. She stabbed it into the ground and yanked out a chunk so that it looked like a mace. Haruki stared at her blankly. Anko, you can use a mace? That's surprising. The first spider saw a moment of weakness and jumped from the trees at the group. Haruki jumped in the air and gave the spider a wide berth while swinging his blade. Extending the end of his sword with wind chakra, he cut right through the spider and landed on the ground. Haruki formed 2 Kage Bunshin and sent them into the forest to cause as much havoc as they could. It would shorten his Sage mode but ultimately allow them to escape. Haruki flew directly towards the closest spiders that would jump at him. He cut out one of the spider's legs from under it using a one-handed swing while simultaneously using a wind whip to slash through the torso of another. Meanwhile, Anko was bashing away at the closest critter and her sanity could be called into question at this point. You fucking 8-legged pieces of shit just don't get it yet, do you? She caused rocks to spear one's abdomen, keeping it pinned as it shrieked before backflipping and smashing in the skull of another that tried to get from behind. I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me. Haruki ran to back her up as 3 more spiders emerged from the surrounding area to attack. The giant arachnids were now extremely wary of Haruki's sword, seeing as how it had been his weapon of choice for the entire day's events. Getting sick of how the spiders were avoiding him, he ripped the sword he had given Anko out of her hand and threw it at one while enhancing it with wind chakra, impaling it against a tree and killing it. Hey! That was mine! Was the indignant cry from the put-out kunoichi. The redhead just shrugged before the 2 scattered due to being double-teamed by the 2 other spiders. Haruki and Anko engaged the spiders. Haruki simply ran some misdirection and cleaved all 4 legs on one side of his spider off. Anko slid underneath it and planted an explosive tag which exploded, showing the area in gore. She then jumped up to smash one that was swaying from thread tauntingly in the tree above. While Haruki was receiving the intel from his now dispelled clones that had obliterated large portions of the advancing horde and saturate the area with his chakra, he ended up being blindsided by a spider from behind and sent sprawling along the ground by the powerful creature. The giant spider skittered closer to the man before one of the more sizable trees from above came crashing down on top of it, killing not only that one spider, but 2 more hiding in the background. Anko landed on top of the tree with the sword that Naruto had thrown in hand. Ha! I found it. Haruki nodded. Good work. But watch your back. Haruki was up, bouncing on the balls of his feet and his fists in front of himself before punching the air. Futon, Fujin Seiken, Wind Release, Divine Fist of the Wind God. Haruki obliterate 4 smaller attackers that were attempting to rush them with a quick series of punches. Haruki stood in a pile of the spider's remains, so I guess we're doing okay for the time being. Anko readied herself to smash any surprises. What's your count? Haruki sighed. Not everything has to be a competition, but if you insist, 1300. Damn it, slash him only at 500. She said pouting, you're only at such a high number because of your stupid clones. It doesn't count. Haruki just rolled his eyes. More are coming. It's time to leave. I'm ready. Then hop to red. I don't have all day. She said, getting ready to bolt straight for the exit. Here goes. Haruki flew through a string of hand seals. More than Anko had seen him use. Ever. Hayaton, Makio Hyosho, Ice Release, Demonic Ice Mirrors. Rantun, Risa Sakasu, Storm Release, Encouraging Crushing Chain Tormenting Principle. Senpo, Shakurazon, Senpo, Chakra Zone. Kyumiaways Jutsu, Refurkushan Refurian, Combination Jutsu, Relection Refrain. Materializing out of water vapor, large mirrors spawned all through the clearing, but based on how the chakra felt, it was clear that more was happening. Suddenly lasers of liquid light shot out of Haruki's raised hands and shot through the spider that came charging into the clearing, vaporizing the organs it touched, killing it instantly. The lasers then bent and fluxed to some unheard command and passed into the mirrors. In the distance, through the shade of the trees in the afternoon light, Anko could see flashes of blue back the way they came. It was over a moment later and Haruki swayed on his feet before stumbling forward, falling to his hands and knees panting. His sage mode vanished completely. That took more out of me than I thought it would. What did you do? Anko asked, trying to process what she had just seen and felt. For hours she had seen this man demonstrate mastery of almost every ninja discipline, wield 4 out of the 5 major elements without the need for many hand seals, and perform feats with chakra and strength that she hadn't witnessed before. But this, she didn't know what to think. Oh, it's simple really. I used a technique from Sage mode to extend the jutsu farther, but using the ambient nature chakra of the area where my chakra has been saturated. It's called Chakra Zone and T takes a lot of effort to control. I used that to extend the mirrors all the way back to the nest. I then used them to effectively see the collective area and reflect my laser jutsu with perfect accuracy through as many spiders as possible all the way back to their nest, effectively slaughtering them all at once. This combination is called Reflection Refrain. Anko blinked. You know what? You're buying me dango and a drink for getting me in this mess. And I'll buy you one for getting me out. I hope you don't have any other plans, because I have a lot of question for you, Red, and you aren't skipping out this time. Haruki didn't bother trying to dodge it. He actually wanted to relax and talk through things with her. And so, the two exhausted Jonin ran as quickly as they could, not stopping even as they left the forest focused too much on their survival and the food they both desperately wanted. Neither noticed a figure stepping out from behind a tree next to the entrance before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. That's it for part 12. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.